What's up, New York? How's New York City? Look at this crowd. I am glad to be in New York. I love New York. I love New York. Wow. Look at this crowd. Unbelievable. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. It is good to be back in New York. Let me begin. Let me begin by saying I want to thank all the grassroots organizers, all the students, all the people who helped put this thing together. I am grateful for you. You're what this campaign is all about. I want to thank the elected officials who are here. I know they were introduced, and I appreciate their support. It is good to be back in New York. Some of you know I used to live in New York City. Used to hang out in Washington Square Park. I know a little something about Greenwich Village. I was about to say I know some of the bars around here, and I think my communications director was trying to cut that off. This is a magnificent crowd. This is a magnificent crowd. And we've been seeing crowds like this as we travel all across the country over the last 7 months since I announced that I was running for the presidency of the United States of America. Everywhere we go, we've been seeing crowds like this. We had 20,000 people in Atlanta, Georgia. We had 20,000 people in Austin, Texas. We had 15,000 people in Oakland, California. We had 10,000 people in Iowa City, Iowa. But what's inspiring about these crowds, and what's inspiring about this crowd today, is not, I love you back. What's inspiring is not the size of the crowds, but it's the makeup of the crowds. Because they are people who come from every walk of American life. You've got young people and you got old people. You got poor folk and some not so poor folk. You've got blacks, whites, Hispanics, Asians, Native Americans. You've got gay and straight. You've got people with disabilities. You've got Democrats and independents. And yes, you've even got some Republicans. No, they're here. I know they're here because when I'm shaking hands, they whisper to me. They say, Barack, I'm a Republican, but I support you. And I tell them, that's okay, you don't need to whisper. We want everybody on the Obama bandwagon. See, and you know, when I see a crowd like this, what it tells me is that the American people are not the problem. The American people are the answer. And we just got to get Washington to start listening to the American people once in a while, and everything is going to be just fine. Now let's face it, part of the reason that some of you are here today, many of you here today, is you are just sick and tired of George Bush. You are tired of Bush and Cheney. You're tired of an administration that treats our Constitution as a nuisance to be avoided as opposed to the very foundation of our liberty and our democracy. You're tired of administration economic policies that widen the divide between rich and poor, so that CEOs are making more in 10 minutes than ordinary people are making in an entire year. And folks are struggling all across America to pay for gas in the gas tank, or save for their child's college education, or save for their own retirement. You're sick and tired of the sight of our fellow citizens standing on rooftops without water, without food, without rescue after a storm. You don't like a Justice Department that doesn't seem to put a big premium on justice. And most of all, you are fed up with a war that should have never been authorized and should have never been waged. A war that's cost us $500 billion and thousands of lives and has not made us more safe, but has diminished our standing in the world. And so there are a lot of reasons to come out just to say enough. We are sick and tired of being sick and tired. We want something new. We insist on change. But these crowds that are coming out, you are coming out not just because you're against something. You want to be for something. You believe that it's still possible for us as a nation to rally around a common purpose and rally around a common destiny. And I think all of us, when we're honest, recognize that although real change in America will begin by getting Bush out of the White House, it can't stop there. It can't stop there. Because our politics are broken. And it is not enough just to change parties in the White House if we have the same kind of politics. It's not enough to change parties if we continue to see the country divided into red states and blue states. And we end up fighting the same petty partisan battles over and over and over and over and over again. We can't just change political parties. We have to change our politics. Because the fact of the matter is that there are those in this race for the presidency who are touting their experience working the system. But the problem is the system is not working for us. There are those who say what you should be looking for is somebody who knows how to play the game better. But the problem is that the game is rigged. And what we need is somebody who's going to put an end to the game playing. The times are too serious. The stakes are too high to play the same political games over and over and over again. I see this all the time on the campaign. We saw it last night. There were folks on the stage who would tell you that Social Security is just fine. We don't have to do anything about it. A lot of young people don't believe that, even though they're paying into the Social Security system each and every year. There are those who will tell you that, getting out of Iraq will be painless. We'll do it with a snap. Not acknowledging the fact that there are no good options now in Iraq. There are bad options and worse options. There are folks who will shift positions and policies on all kinds of things depending on which way the wind is blowing. But that can't be the kind of politics that we pursue, because that's not going to be the politics that actually delivers on the change that we are looking for. And I have to say one last thing. Even your senator in New York wasn't clear about the Yankees. Now, I know who I'm rooting for. Except they're not in the pennant this year, the White Sox. But I know my team. What, you booing the... Did I hear somebody boo the White Sox? The Mets? They're having problems. All right, let's not start talking baseball now. But look, think about it. We have been talking about health care for decades now, through Democratic and Republican administrations. And yet nothing changes. Year after year, every 4 years, politicians come before you and say, we're going to fix a broken health care system. And we know why. Because the drug companies and the insurance companies have spent $1 billion over the last decade keeping reform from happening through Democratic and Republican administrations. And if we're going to change things, we've got to put an end to that kind of business in Washington. We've been talking for decades now about putting an end to our dependency on foreign oil. And yet, year after year after year after year, we see the same thing: record profits for ExxonMobil, and higher prices at the tank, and more greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. And it's not surprising when you hear that Dick Cheney met with the environmental groups once, met with the renewable energy groups once, and met with the oil and gas companies 40 times when he put together our energy policy. That's the way business has been done in Washington. And so the challenge that we have today is restoring a sense that politics is not just a business, but that politics is a mission. That power doesn't always have to trump principle. That we can expect from our leaders that they are going to tell the truth and be honest with you about the problems that we face. And they're not going to equivocate and hedge and hem and haw. You know, it's easier to understand what I mean when I talk about a politics of mission when you get out of Washington. Because the best trip that I've had on this campaign so far, I went out to Oakland, California. And we got a lot of Oakland folks around here. Oakland in the house. And I went there because the Service Employees International Union, SEIU, had organized all the presidential candidates to walk in the shoes of one of their members for a day. And so when I got to Oakland, I woke up at 5 in the morning, and I went to the home of a 61-year-old woman named Pauline Beck. And Miss Pauline Beck is a home care worker. She gets paid about $10 an hour. She wakes up every single day at 5 to take care of 2 foster kids who don't have a family of their own, and so she's taking them in. And then she goes to her real job, which is to look after an 86-year-old amputee named John Thornton. And so I went with her to do her job for the morning, which involves scrubbing floors and helping Mr. Thornton get out of bed and putting on his leg and helping him get dressed and changing soiled sheets and doing breakfast and cleaning the house. My wife was shocked when she heard about this. But it was the best day that I had, because listening to this humble 61-year-old woman talk about the hardships of her life without a trace of self-pity, just glad to be of some service to somebody, just hoping that maybe she could get a little more pay to take care of those 2 foster kids, just hoping that maybe she could have a little more security in her retirement, just hoping that maybe she could get a day off once in a while to rest a tired back. I was reminded of what politics should be all about. It should be about that decency in the American people, that generosity of spirit in somebody like Miss Beck. And that decency and that generosity of spirit, which is out there to be tapped, it has to be expressed not only in our families, not only in our religious institutions, it's got to express itself in our government. And I think the American people are waiting to see that spirit return to our government. But they've got to have a leader in the White House who's willing to feed them hope and reason and tolerance instead of fear and conflict and division. And that is why I am running for the presidency of the United States of America. Now, when I talk like this, I got to tell you, sometimes the pundits, reporters, folks in Washington, they roll their eyes. They say, oh, he's talking about hope again. He's so naive. He's a hope peddler. He's a hope monger. You like that, huh? I stand guilty as charged. I'm hopeful about America, and I'm optimistic about America. And I don't know why other folks aren't hopeful and why they aren't optimistic. You know, I think that they believe it's a symptom of what they consider to be my lack of experience. Now, I was confused when I first heard this argument about lack of experience because I spent over 2 decades in public service as a community organizer, as a civil rights lawyer, as a constitutional law professor, as a state senator, as a United States senator. So I thought I had some pretty good experience. But what it turns out is what they mean is you haven't been in Washington long enough. We haven't seasoned you. You know, we haven't stewed you in the ways of Washington. And I've got to try to explain to them, you know, listen, there are a couple of guys named Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld who had 2 of the best resumes in Washington. Longevity does not guarantee good judgment. A long resume says nothing about your character. So let me tell you about the experience I bring to this race. I bring the experience of bringing people together to get things done. Like I did in Illinois, providing thousands of people health insurance that didn't have it, or fixing a death penalty system that was broken, bringing law enforcement and civil rights advocates together to make sure that we were videotaping every interrogations in capital cases so we wouldn't have false confessions. I have the experience of taking on the special interests and winning, like I did in Illinois when we passed the first campaign finance reform legislation in 25 years. Back then, when I first got to the state legislature, you could use campaign contributions for your personal use. You could buy a mink coat for your wife. And we put an end to that, despite the fact that people in my own party didn't like it. And when I got to Washington, I did the same thing, working with Russ Feingold. We passed last year the toughest ethics reform legislation since Watergate, so big corporate lobbyists can't give gifts, and they can't give meals, and they can't give corporate jets. And if they're going to bundle money for congressmen, you know who they're bundling it for and where they're getting their money from. Because I think the American people should know who's paying for people's politics. I bring the experience of speaking out even when it's not comfortable. Like I did in 2002, before the war started, and I stood up in front of a crowd in Chicago and I said, this war is a bad idea. At a time when it was unpopular to oppose the war. Bringing people together, standing up to special interests, speaking truth to power. Those are the experiences I bring to bear to the presidency of the United States of America. And I may not have all the experience that Washington likes, but I promise you, I've got the experience that America needs right now. And that's the reason that I'm running. I don't know about you, but I do not accept that in the wealthiest nation on earth, we still have 47 million people without health insurance and millions more who are being bankrupt because insurance isn't paying what they promise. And I know something about this personally because my mother died of cancer when she was 53 years old. And I remember watching her in her hospital bed, and she wasn't thinking about getting well. She wasn't thinking about coming to terms with her own mortality. She was thinking about whether or not the insurance company was going to pay her medical bills because she had gotten sick right as she was taking a new job, and they were talking about maybe it was a pre-existing condition. So I know what it's like to watch a loved one suffer, not just from an illness, but from a broken healthcare system. And that is the reason that as President of the United States, I will offer a plan for everybody to get the same kind of coverage that I get as a member of Congress and reduce the cost of premiums from all families all across America. And we're not going to wait 20 years. We're not going to wait 10 years. I will do it by the end of my first term as President of the United States of America. I don't know about you, but I do not accept that we have to keep on sending $800 million a day to hostile nations, fueling the war on terrorism because of our addiction to foreign oil. We know what to do. We've got to curb greenhouse gases. And we've got to increase fuel efficiency standards on cars. If we increase fuel efficiency standards on cars to 40 miles per gallon, we would save the equivalent of all the oil we import from the Persian Gulf. Imagine what that would do for our environment, what it would do for our economy, what it would do for our foreign policy. Now, when I put forward this proposal, I didn't go to some environmental group in California. I went to Detroit in front of the automakers. And I have to say that they were all really quiet. But that's okay, because part of what I think the next president has to do is not just tell the American people what they want to hear. We've got to tell the American people what they need to hear. We've got to tell the American people the truth, because that's how we're going to meet the challenges that we face. I don't accept that we cannot provide a world-class education for every single American. Which is why we are going to recruit an entire new generation of teachers to fill up our classrooms, and we're going to pay them more money, and we're going to provide them more professional development, and we're going to work with them, not against them, to raise high standards in the schools. And we're going to invest in early childhood education to close the achievement gap. And we're going to set up after school and summer school programs so young people have a place to do their homework if they don't have a quiet place at home. And while we're at it, don't you think it's about time that we made college affordable and accessible for every single American? It seems to me that's something we can do. Let's create programs for national service for every young person. You don't need to be saddled with $50,000 worth of debt. Let's get the banks and the financial institutions out of the student loan business and increase the number of grants. We can do that. I don't accept that the American dream is a thing of the past. I think the American dream lies before us in the future, which is why we've got to make work pay. If you work every single day, you should not be poor. We should have not just a minimum wage, you should have a living wage. We should encourage, not discourage, unions from organizing so they can do what they do best, which is lift people up into the middle class. should provide tax relief to people who really need it, not to people who weren't asking for it and don't need it. And while we're at it, we should stop giving tax breaks to big corporations that are moving jobs overseas. Let's invest in companies that are investing in you and right here in America. That's something that we can do. Most of all, I do not accept that there is a contradiction between keeping America safe and maintaining our moral standing in the world. We have done great damage to America's security and America's image over these last 6 years. We remember 9/11. We remember the world rallying around us after the horrific events just a few miles away. And we said to ourselves, we are going to change. And the world said, we will change with you to prevent such a travesty from happening once again. And we frittered all that goodwill away. I was opposed to the war in Iraq in 2002, 2003, 2004, 5, 6. In 2007, I introduced legislation that said we have to place a timetable. We've got to be as careful getting out as we were careless getting in, but we've got to get our troops out, get all our combat troops home by March 30th of next year. That timetable was adopted by the Senate, but George Bush vetoed that timetable. But we cannot give up now. I guarantee you, as President of the United States, the first thing I will do when I take office is call together the Joint Chiefs of Staff and say, you have a new mission, and that is to get out our troops as quickly and as safely as possible. We do not need them in the midst of a civil war. There is no military solution to be had in Iraq. We have to step up the diplomacy and bring the political factions together and provide the humanitarian aid, because the Iraqis are suffering right now. We've got 4 million Iraqis that are displaced. That's not a consequence of us getting our troops home. That's something that is going on right now, and we have to do something about it. But here's the thing, New York. I don't want to have to wait 18 months, because our families and troops and this country cannot afford to wait another 18 months, which is why I have already said I will not vote to provide George Bush another blank check, and we've got to encourage every single congressman and every single senator to say, if we don't have a timetable to exit out of Iraq, we will not continue to provide the money for George Bush to keep on this failed course. But understand this, it is going to take more than just bringing this war to a close in order to repair the damage that's been done. We are going to have to completely change our mindset when it comes to foreign policy. I talked about diplomacy. One of the things that we're going to have to do is recognize we can't just talk to our friends, we also have to talk to our enemies. And I got in a little back and forth with the senator from New York about this. Said, oh, you're naive, that's irresponsible, you can't meet with these folks. I believe what John F. Kennedy said, which is we should never negotiate out of fear, but we should never fear to negotiate. Our unwillingness to talk to our enemies, that doesn't make us look tough. It makes us look arrogant. Strong countries and strong presidents talk to their adversaries and tell our adversaries where we stand and what we stand for. You see, I'm looking forward to standing before the United Nations and the gathering of world leaders as President of the United States and saying, America's back, and we are ready to lead. But we are not going to lead just with our military. Yes, we're going to get out of the wrong battlefield in Iraq and get onto the right battlefield, taking on Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden. Yes, we're going to lock down nuclear weapons that pose a threat to all of humanity. But we're also going to spend some time listening to the needs of other countries. And we're going to build schools in the Middle East that teach math and science instead of hatred of Americans and Israel. We're going to bring relief to those suffering from HIV/AIDS in sub-Saharan Africa. We're going to restore habeas corpus because we're not a nation that locks people up without charging them. We are not a nation that sends prisoners off in the dead of night to other countries to be tortured. That is not who we are. We are America, and we stand for something. We are that last best hope on earth. We are a bright and shining light when we stand up for our ideals and our convictions. And that's what is at stake in this election. Can we renew our confidence in our ideals and our convictions? Can we take that leap of faith and say that the world as it is not the world as it has to be? You know, I am reminded every single day of my life, if not by events, then by my wife, that I am not a perfect man. And I will not be a perfect president. But I can guarantee you this. I will always tell you what I think. I will always tell you where I stand. I will be honest with you about the challenges that we face and the sacrifices that we may have to make together. I will listen to you even when we disagree. And most of all, I want to open up the doors of our government again to you so that we can make American democracy work, not behind veils of secrecy, not behind dissembling, not behind closed doors. We are going to make America work for you. Now, what I'm asking for is not easy, especially to the young people that I see here tonight. I have to explain to you there are easier choices to make in this election. There are safer choices to make. There are competent people who will manage the system as it is. And we will tinker around with things, and certainly it'll be an improvement over George Bush. But it won't solve long-term Social Security solvency. It's not going to solve global warming because nobody will have talked about the very real changes that we're going to have to make in order to take that on. It's not going to fundamentally restructure our education system. And so the question is, are you willing to take that risk? Because it's easier sometimes to just stay cynical and say, you know what, nothing is going to change. The system is what it is. But see, when you make that decision, when you turn a blind eye to injustice, when you say, you know, nothing can change, that's what the folks who believe politics is a game are counting on. That's what they're hoping for, because then they can continue to play the same game they've been playing. And so the challenge that I give to all of you tonight is not just come out for a rally. I need you to be a part of this campaign. I need you to work for change. I need you to fight for change. I need you to sign up on BarackObama.com. I need you to become a precinct captain. I need you to send emails to all your friends. I need you to go door to door. I need you to help folks get organized and help folks get mobilized. Because that's how change happens. Change does not happen from the top down. Change happens from the bottom up. That's how change has always happened. That's how we brought an end to slavery. That's how we brought an end to segregation. That's how women got the right to vote. That's how unions got the right to organize. That's how the environmental movement started. That's how we brought an end to the Vietnam War. That's how we will bring an end to the Iraq War. Because millions of voices decide we imagine something better. We believe in a better America. Now, I know some of you may still feel doubtful. You're thinking, well, my voice can't make a difference. So let me just close by telling you a quick story of a trip I took down to South Carolina. We got some South Carolina folks here. And I went to Columbia, South Carolina, which is the capital, because I had been invited to speak to a legislative conference there. So I'm sitting next to a state representative down in South Carolina, Columbia, and I turn to her and I say, I really want your endorsement in my campaign. And she said, she thought about it, she said, Obama, I will give you my endorsement if you come to my hometown of Greenwood, South Carolina. And I must have had a glass of wine or something, because right away I just said, okay. Come to find out, Greenwood is an hour and a half from every place else. So about a month later, I fly into South Carolina, and we get to the airport late. It's about midnight. And we get to the hotel about 1 o'clock. And I've been campaigning for 10 days straight without being home, and I'm missing my wife, and I'm missing my kids. I'm missing the pillow. I'm about to go into my room. My staff taps me on the shoulder, says, Senator, sorry to tell you this, but we need to be in the car by 6 o'clock. I say, why is that? They say, well, we've got to go to Greenwood, South Carolina, like you promised. So the next morning, I wake up, and I'm exhausted. And I open up the shades in the hotel room, and it's pouring down rain outside. And I open up the New York Times, and there's a bad story about me in the New York Times. And I go downstairs, and my umbrella blows open, and I get poured on. So now I'm inside the car. I'm wet, I'm sleepy, I'm mad. My staff isn't talking to me because they know I've got this look on my face. So we drive, and we drive, and we drive, and we drive, until finally we pull up into Greenwood, South Carolina, although you don't know right away that you're in Greenwood because there are no big buildings in Greenwood. There's some fields, and then we go to a park, and then there's a little building, and we go inside the building, and lo and behold, there are only 20 people there. There had been some miscommunication between my staff and the state rep. The state rep, she's not happy with me because she couldn't bring in more people, and I'm not happy with my staff. And the 20 people, they all look kind of damp and sleepy, like they're not that excited to see me either. But I'm a professional. I'm running for president. So I'm smiling, and I'm shaking hands, and how do you do, and what do you do? And suddenly, behind me, I hear this voice crying out, fired up! And the other 20 people, they act like nothing's happened. They just say, fired up. And then we hear the voice say, ready to go! And the other 20 people, the Greenwood natives, they all just say, ready to go. And we don't know what's going on. We look behind us, and there's this little woman there. In my memory, she's like 5'2", 5'3". She might be taller, but she's wearing sort of a outfit. She got a big hat on, and she's smiling at me. She's about 60 years old, and she's smiling, and she says, fired up! Come to find out, she is a city council woman from Greenwood, South Carolina, who is famous for her chant. And so for the next 5 minutes, she proceeds to chant over and over and over again, 5 minutes. Fired up, ready to go. Fired up, ready to go. And everybody in the room now has joined in, and I'm standing there with my staff, and we don't know what to do. But here's the thing, New York. After about a minute or two, I'm feeling kind of fired up. And I'm feeling like I'm ready to go. So I start joining in the chant, and I'm feeling good. And even after we leave Greenwood for the whole day after that, I'd see my staff. I'd say, are you fired up? And my staff would say, I'm fired up. Are you fired up? I say, yeah. Are you ready to go? I'm ready to go. And it goes to show you, New York City, that one voice can change a room. And if one voice can change a room, then it can change a city. And if one voice can change a city, then it can change a state. And if one voice can change a state, it can change a country. And if it can change a country, then it can change the world. So I want to know, New York City, are you fired up? Are you ready to go? Fired up? Ready to go? Fired up? Ready to go? Fired up? Ready to go? Let's go change the world.